Hello everyone. So, I'm just going to take us through making my own personal scenario now. Uh, so I'm just going to go through all the steps I would personally go through for making a scenario, and then I'll functionally make it fully working, and so that way you can follow through all the way through with me. So that way you can see everything I'm doing every step of the way. So first off, I'm going to just change up the terrain here. We're going to just get rid of these really quick, these robot starts, the AI starts, because I don't plan to make this an AI having map. I don't intend to have the AIs think for themselves. I'm going to tell them exactly what to do with the triggers option here. So what I'm going to do here is I think I'll just make a generic forest here. I'm trying to decide on the kind I'll do. I guess I'll just do something like the Amazon rainforest. It's got a nice aesthetic, I like it. So personally I like to turn up the density, or not the density, sorry, the underbrush a lot to really just have as much stuff underneath as I can in between the trees, just for the look of it. Now right now I've got my settings turned down to minimum. You can probably tell by how awful the grass looks. That's fine. Realistically, I know what it looks like on higher settings. It's just I prefer to use the lower ones, just so that way I can make all of the various things without worrying about my computer starting to get a little bit jittery here and there, and then I'll test it later with higher settings to see if I'm having problems with it. So I'm just going to start making forest here. And again, I set the settings for the brush to just the maximum. There we go. I think I've gotten everything in this particular circle covered in rainforest ground and trees. I'm going to let that go, and all the trees should pop in, and you can see that green underbrush and some fallen trees and stuff. That wasn't there, but that's there in part because I turned the underbrush way up. Naturally, some will be there, but not as much as currently is there. And then, since I don't like how small this map is, I'm actually going to go over here and I am going to change the map size, and I'll just do a small increase of 100 each. So that way the map should increase by 100. And you can see we've got the triangles here that always appear from making a new map. But I'm just going to ignore those for now and just work on the map here. And just try and get every bit of it forested in for the scenario. There we go. Now you may see the trees will be deleted by the tree placement editor again. That's fine. They will just pop back in slightly different locations. Won't really damage anything. And now I'm going to get rid of these annoying little triangles here because I personally don't like them. So I'm going to use sample elevation, and then I'm going to press 0 to make it almost as large as possible. Actually, I might just use the brush settings and set it to large. And then I'm going to sample elevation and just remove those triangles at the edges. You can see it'll bring the trees down with it. So you don't need to worry about, your trees floating in midair. They will come back down. If you do sometimes see them floating in midair like that, all you need to do is just select them like this, click move, and now they're on the ground again. So if you ever see them floating in the air, it's not a huge deal to fix that. Now, I have to decide what I want this map to be like, And what I'm thinking currently is, since it's in the Amazon, I might do something akin to the British, and then maybe we'll have some British up here, and then we'll have the players or player start down here, and we'll just make it so that the players can help the Inca or something like that. So first things first though, what I'm going to want to do is decide on how I'm going to want to make those decks look for the players. Now, since I'm going to just be doing the one civilization, well, actually I might make it Inca, Aztecs, sorry, I might make it just the Inca and the Aztecs, so that way we have both. And so what I'm going to want to do is, before I change up anything, I'm going to get rid of most of these, so that way I have space to make my own decks. And if you didn't know this, it's important to know, in the scenario editor, after I save the game, all of these cards will be removed and I won't be able to use them to make decks anymore. So I'm going to copy the land deck and call it Land Inca 2. And now I have my own separate deck for the Inca people. And so now I can set up whatever cards I might want for the Incas to use. You do have to make your own separate deck. If you just edit the base ones, I've learned nothing happens. It'll just auto-adjust them back to what they were, and that's not good. So you have to make your own deck. Any decks you delete will be gone forever though. Normally I don't, but just for the sake of this, I'm doing that. Alright, so now I've got an Inca deck set up. And now for the Aztecs. Again, I'm going to get rid of all of these unnecessary decks. If you want to leave them in, you can. I'm just doing this as an example. I'm going to copy the land deck. You can name it anything. Land Aztec 2. Copy. Now I know it says 26 cards for Aztec. Once you actually play the scenario, it'll just get rid of one of those cards. I don't know why it's like that. I guess they never fixed it or changed it or whatever. Anyways, so, alright. So that's going to be my Aztec deck. And so now that I've set up my decks, I can save it. We're going to call this something like Defense of the Amazon. That's going to be our map name. And now I'm not sure if it immediately changes it or no. So the next time I load in though, all those deck cards will be gone. And I can show you if I can just find it really quick here. Since I've already made the decks, I'm not super worried about losing access to the deck making, but figure it's worth. There's Defense of the Amazon there. Forgive me, I'm very, very bad at noticing what I name my own projects. But there, now I've loaded back into the map, and you can see that the home city editor, and we'll go to Aztecs, build decks, and now all those cards are gone. So you have to make your deck before you leave or do anything like scenario test or any of that. You've got to make your decks, because otherwise it'll just remove them and you can never use them ever again. But moving on from that, so now that I've got roughly what I want to do, which is something like the British attacking the Inca and the Aztec in this scenario, I'm going to want to make some room for the British. There we go. And we're going to want to switch the team. We're going to change it to player 3. And then, I almost forgot, we're going to want to change player 3 to British. Player 2 can be Inca or Spanish. Or, not Inca or Spanish, Inca or Aztec. You can see there's a lot of the various hidden campaign civilizations in here, but most of those don't work properly. So we've set player 2 as Inca, and we'll set player 1 as Aztecs, and then we'll set player 1 and 2 as Team 1, and player 3 as Team 3, because it doesn't matter particularly. And now we'll go back to building a small base for the British. Fort. I like to use fort walls because they just look very nice. They look very powerful. So what I'm going to do here is grab SPC, fort wall large. SPC means special. IGC means in-game cinematic. You usually don't want to use those because they don't usually work right, because they aren't supposed to be used at all, except outside of cinematics. So, SPC are fine. It usually just means that they can't be used in some way. So we're going to put down all of these fort walls. Now, fort walls are a little odd. They don't quite look right most of the time, and that is because the snapping for the scenario editor is very strange. You can absolutely make it work by manually moving all of them, but just for the sake of this, I'm going to do what I prefer, which is just to put something there to make it look like there's no actual clipping or large gaps there. And you can see the gates themselves are actually free movement. They don't have snapping. They are not going to snap all over the map. You can place those gently as you like. And I'm using the fort wall large, but another good thing to do and good practice is to take the other fort wall types and put them in here. So you can see I just put down the fort wall barracks, and then I can put down a fort wall stable, and then I can also take the fort wall and then fort wall corner. Oh no, this is what I normally use to fill in the gaps, so I'll just leave that there. Small there. You can see the fort wall small has completely different snapping to the other fort walls, because of course it does. Oh, that's a very specific special kind of fort wall, so apparently I'm not allowed to use that one. So we'll use SPC fort wall small. That should use the correct one. There we go. Still the same issue as the last one. Does not snap correctly. And so what you will probably end up having to do is just manually move it using the move. And then also fort wall medium. Again, it's good to use different fort walls because, as you can see, if you just use the large one, you just get always these ladders, always the wooden walkway, always the same. And for the most part, I think it looks okay, but I can understand how some people think that that looks ugly. So to mix it up a little bit, you want to vary it between fort wall small, fort wall medium, fort wall large, and all sorts of other types of wallings. And then once you actually place them down, you can use Control-C and then Control-V to just make them pop up again, so that way you don't have to use the object search. That's my preferred method of doing it if I'm going to do this. There we go. And then we can just mix in very elevations here. And now it doesn't have to look perfect because I'm going to manually adjust things here. So first of all, I want to try and make things look as connected and proper as they can be. There we go. Now I want to make sure that they look as best they can for this particular wall piece and the connecting starting one we did. So I may have to adjust all of these slightly. Now you can see that looks completely fine, and realistically, if you're just doing it facing away, that can probably work fine. However, if you do it looking at the player, you can usually see it looks like there's a gap here. So facing away it looks fine, but when you actually see the exterior, it doesn't look quite right. So next up, we're going to fill in these holes here. And I like to use the Control-C, Control-V method and just put down some fort wall gap closers. Those are called fort wall corners. And then I'm going to put them on the other side too, even though it doesn't look like it needs it that badly. I'm still going to put it there just for the sake of symmetry. So that way we've got 3 on this side, 3 on this side. It looks different because we used long pieces here and short pieces here. Again, that's not great, but if you are looking for perfect symmetry, you would want to mix them up to look the exact same way. I'm not going to do that right this moment. So next up, I'm going to just make some basic fort stuff, like internally, for the British here. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add an actual fort for the British to have in their base here, and just rotate it. You don't have to hold anything to rotate things in Scenario Editor, which is nice. And then I'm going to give it a fort center right here. And now we just want to add various things to their base that look correct for a fort. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to buildings. For some reason it's not letting go. There we go. Well, let go of the commandery finally there, or the fort center as it's called. If you've played Age of Empires recently, you know that the fort center was made into an actual usable building for the Maltese civilization. Anyways, so we're going to want to add in some barracks here for the British to have. Add in a few barracks there. And then I'm going to add in something like a small church right there. A Capitol building. And I'm going to add in a stable here. It's a bit down. There we go. I'm going to add in a stable. Maybe add another stable over here. There we go. Then I will add some mills. You want to be careful with that because mills are what people normally call farms, but you have to be very specific. They are called mills for the Euro civs, and for the, I guess, the America civs. America civ. But those are called mills. The native civilizations call them farms. So you just want to be careful when you're doing that. And again, since I'm going to be controlling the AI, this is mostly all for decoration. This is mostly just to make it look like they actually are doing something. the bots aren't actually going to be doing really anything. So next I would want to just add something, some kind of cannon of some sort. So I like the Maltese artillery fixed gun. It looks nice. It functions properly. So I'm going to add that here and here. Now, it may not look perfect when it comes in. It may be pointing the wrong way, but that's all right. There we go. And then, since we are using the fixed gun, the Maltesian fixed gun, I'm going to use ignore placement restrictions to add in this specific looking little fixed gun base, and then I'm going to do it over here too, and I'm kind of clipping them inside of each other so that way they place properly. So now I've got some decorations for my fixed guns as well, and then I'm going to put down a commander of this fort. Oh right, I need to go back to all or units, general, DE general. And there we go. So now we've got a decent looking little fort of operations for the British. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on where the players are going to start, and also what I'm going to give them in terms of this scenario. So first things first, we gotta change it to player 1 and town center. You don't have to start with the town center, but I figure I will just do a town center here. And for player 2, I'm going to just drop them a town center here as well. There we go. So those are perfectly fine as is for the moment, but we're also going to want to give them their hero. So War Chief, oh wait, no. There we go. DE Inca War Chief. Okay, we'll give that to player 2. Then XP Aztec War Chief. Put him right there. So now both players have their explorers or heroes. And now I can decide exactly what the players are going to be dealing with, what kind of circumstances they have to put up with in the scenario. So what I'm thinking for this particular scenario is something like a shared resources scenario. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a diamond mine. Oh, I'm still in units. There we go, sorry. We're going to put down a mine. So apparently it doesn't have a diamond mine in here. So instead, I'm going to put down a gold mine for both players. And I'm going to make this something of a shared resources kind of map. So both players are going to be basically having to share their resources between each other. We're going to want to give player 2 a bit more room here, because right now it's a little claustrophobic for them, and I can understand if they might want some more room to expand out. And I'm going to just real quickly put down some more trees over here for player 2. I want to make them nearby, but I don't want to make them in their face unless I'm placing the trees individually, so that way I have a bit more control over that. I'm going to move the trees a little closer here and here. There we go, so that's a decent start. So now that we've got our tree lines somewhat changed up here, we're going to want to put down huntable animals for our players. Now what I'm thinking is I'm going to make a large shared group of huntable animals. So first I have to decide what is going to be in the Amazon here. There we go. So if I remember correctly, on the Amazon map there are tapirs. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So I'm going to put down a decent number of tapirs here. And then I'm going to select them all. Remember, if you go to object placement and place it under Gaia, and then you double click on them, you'll select all of them. Then herd editor and create herd. And now those will all move in unison if one gets shot. And I forgot to turn off ignore placement restrictions, so we're going to turn that off. And there were also, I believe, llamas. So I'm just trying to remember, not the herdable kind of llama, but a type of llama that you can normally just eat. I think they're called guanco. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not. I'm going to put down a large number of those. They normally spawn in-game in large numbers, so we'll put those down in a large herd. Create a herd again, and there we go. So now I have two herds that my players are going to have to somewhat share. And now I'm going to get rid of this ugly little spot here that it made from me placing the gold mine down originally. There we go. And then I'm going to put the actual proper spot back under this gold mine. There we go. And now I'm going to put down some extra resources for the players, but I'm going to put them further away so that the players do not immediately go to them, because I don't want my players to do that. I want them to try and cooperate here to get those and distribute the resources with each other. I'm just going to put silver mines in various places throughout the map. Again, far away, so that way my players are unlikely to go to those, but they're still there if the players feel like using them. And now we can decide on if there's anything extra we're going to start our players off with. For example, I could start them off with a farm, just as something I might give them. So we'll start player 1 having a farm right there, and player 2 having a farm right here. So they have those immediately from the start. And then another thing I could do, I think it's called the native embassy. Yep, there we go. Is I'm also going to give both players a starting native embassy, since they're both going to be native civilizations. So that way they've got both of those immediately. And I see this place looks a little bland, so I'm just gonna spray some greenery here. I don't want to overdo it, overkill it with trees, but I do want, you know, a decent amount of trees. Now I'm going to want to put down more animals for my players out in the wilds, because if they feel like hunting and collecting gold out in the wilderness here, I don't want to necessarily stop them. I just want to make them think that it's much better to stay in the starting area and just start farming instead. So I'm going to put down guancos here and guancos here. There we go. Then we'll put down some tapirs. Doesn't matter if I put them down under a specific player. just so long as I switch to Gaia once I'm done. So that way I can select them all. We'll put tapirs over here. And we'll put some tapirs here. Now I've got to add them all into the herd editor. So I'm going to select all these tapirs. And then herd editor, create herd. And then let them go. Select all these guancos, create herd, let them go. Select all these guancos, create herd, and let them go. And then select these tapirs, create herd, and then let them go. And now, as you can see, we've got 6 herds already. Very quick process to make herds with the scenario editor. Now, since my players, I either want them to be able to defend themselves, or I want player 3 to take time to get to them. I need to decide what I'm going to do with this. So what I'm thinking I'll do is I will give the players extra time, and so we're going to want to explain why it'll take time through a environmental storytelling. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is what I think I'll do is I'll have British send out scouts and just scout the player's base, and then that's when they will decide to attack. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my triggers, and I'm going to choose group editor, insert, and I'm going to do player 3 scout trigger. Insert, there we go. And triggers, insert. I'm going to put this one down as spawn scouts. And then we're going to give it a certain amount of time for the scouts to spawn. So I'm thinking maybe at the around 7-minute mark. Well, maybe not the 7-minute mark, maybe the 10-minute mark. What I'm going to do is 600 seconds. If I remember correctly, that's 10 minutes. So at 10 minutes, we're going to have a game create some units. So since they're not going to exist, I'm going to make them as an army, because I don't want the players to be able to just find them out in the wilds and accidentally do something like kill their units or something that would probably ruin the cinematic feel of it. So we're going to create an army for player 3. We're going to call it Scout Army Player 3. And we're going to choose Ghost Army. You don't want to do Create Army because that's for existing units on the field. Ghost Army is for units that don't exist. There we go. Oh, I just realized it didn't save my trigger name. So Scouts for Player 3. There we go. But now we're going to go to Army, deploy, Army, Scout Army Player 3, and I think they're going to be Hussars, so we're going to want to go to H, and there you see Hussar, and since I don't expect my players to be able to scout the whole map fast, I'm going to just have the scouts spawn down here to save me some extra triggers. Well, maybe not there, but just slightly inside the map. I'm worried they might get stuck outside. And then we're going to do a count of 2. And so now the scouts will just spawn right here. And now we're going to make a trigger to tell them where to go. Scouts move, trigger. There we go. Then we're going to go to Army. Sorry, we're going to want to go to Timer. Sorry. I thought I was in the wrong one. And every, say, 30 seconds, they will move. And now we're going to want to do Army. And then move. And then we're going to set area to here. we're going to want to choose Scout Army Player 3. And then we will just have, I'm not going to have them attack move, but I will have them run, because they're supposed to scout through, so it wouldn't make sense for them to attack immediately. And if I wanted to make it more complex, I could probably add in something like, well, I would want to make a separate trigger for it actually, and I would call it Scouts Return to Base. I'll try and make it here, just for the sake of showing it. And then what we're going to want to do is Army Distance to Unit. I'm going to select Player 2's Town Center, Target Unit, Show, and then Army within Distance. And then we'll say something like 20. And then you would have your army move again, set area, and then back into Player 3's base, Scout Army. And again, you wouldn't want to turn on attack move, just have them run back. And if I did that correctly, they should just run back to Yellow's base after running through. Next up, I'm going to just make a standard set of units that will come from Yellow's base to attack Blue and Red. So what I'm going to want to do now is create more armies for Player 3. And so what I'm thinking I'll have is Muskets Army 1. And that's going to be another Ghost Army. Since Player 3 is the only one that can have muskets, I'm not specifying Player 3, but if you have multiple different things going on, you may want to specify the player. And then Musket Army 2, Hussar Army 1, Hussar Army 2, and then I think I'll also have them have Grenadiers. There we go. So Grenadiers Army 1. There we go. And now we have multiple armies we can send out from Yellow's base. And so what we're going to do now is Group Editor, Group 2, and I'm going to name it Player 3 Attack. Well, actually I might just leave it short, just for the sake of hopefully not breaking anything with the names. And now that we have Player 3 Attack, I'm going to insert a trigger. And what I like to do to make armies start spawning is I like to give the AI upgrades that won't really impact anything. So I'm going to call this Start Deploy Army Muskets. Oh, I spelled muskets wrong. There we go. And so I'm going to have it on a timer for, we'll put it to 700 seconds. Actually 730 seconds. So that way the scouts have time to come back. And then we'll set tech status. So you'll want to find set tech status down here and the S's for this. And then Player 3. And then I like to use most of the church checks, and also Bastion won't have a huge impact on the AI. So we'll set Bastion as active for the bots. And then to start actually spawning the units, forgot to change the trigger name, Start Spawn Muskets. There we go. And I should should probably put 1. And then we're going to want to set it to text status equals. And then I found Bastion in there very quickly, so I'm just going to choose Bastion. There we go. So that'll make it so that only once Bastion is researched via this trigger up here, that the muskets will start spawning. Then we're also going to want to add in some other additional requirements. We're going to want to say that every 40 seconds the muskets spawn. And then the next requirement we're going to add in here is that the buildings that they're spawning from have to be alive. So we're going to choose is alive, and we're going to want to source both the barracks here. So that means every 40 seconds have had to pass, Bastion has to be researched, and the barracks both have to be alive for the muskets to deploy. And then we're going to go into our effects. We're going to choose Army Deploy, just like we did with the Scouts. And then we're going to choose Muskets Army 1. And then we have to find their proto name. It's down here under the M's. There we go. And then how many I want to spawn. I'm thinking maybe 10 spawn here. And we'll have them spawn in front of this barracks. And then we're going to want to do make a new trigger and name it. And we're going to want to make sure we name it something like Muskets Attack 1. We're going to want to put it on loop. And let me make sure start spawn, start deploy. So start spawn should have also been put on loop. I forgot to do that. So I just corrected that real quick here. And then this is going to be our muskets moving to attack. So what we're going to want to do here is set the timer shorter than their deploy time. So I set it to 40 seconds. So every 40 seconds they would spawn. So now you want the timer to be every 30, 20, 10 seconds that they also move. So I'm going to choose 30. And then we're going to choose Army Move. We're going to choose Muskets Army 1. And we're going to set them to move down to here. And then I'm going to choose Attack Move. So that way they will attack the entire way down. So now we have it set up so the muskets will spawn. And they will leave the base, walk down here, and start attacking. And then what I can also do here is we're gonna change it so that after a certain point in time, we're gonna have some additional muskets spawn, and we're also gonna have some hussars spawn, and we're gonna have grenadiers spawn. So what we're gonna do now is start deploy hussars. Misspelled hussars there. There we go. And then we're going to set this one for a timer 2. And then once we get our timer set up, I have to decide on a time. I'm thinking maybe 1,000 seconds. Well, actually, maybe not 1,000. Maybe more like 900 seconds. And then we're just going to repeat the process we did with the musketeers, but with the stables instead. So we're going to choose set text status. I'm terrible at navigating these menus, by the way. I apologize for that. Set text status in player 3. You have to make sure it's player 3. It won't default to the last player you used. That's actually something I should go check here. Yes, I did set it to player 3. And then we'll set the text status for player 3 here. So again, I like to use the church ones because they all have fairly little actual effect on things. So things like church mass cavalry. Well, since I'm spawning the units for the AI, it doesn't matter if they're cavalry trained faster. I'm in control of that. And then now that we've done start deploy hussars, I'm going to make a new trigger. And we're going to call it start spawn hussars 1. I'm going to loop it. So what we're going to want to do here is go to text status equals player 3 church mass cavalry. And there we go. Then we're going to want to also choose is alive. And we're going to want to choose our stable. There we go. Now insert. And we're going to name this something like start hussars attack 1. We're going to want to loop it. And then all we need for the conditions is timer. I'm going to make it 20 seconds. And then we're going to do army move. And then we're going to have SAR Army 1 come down here and attack move. And there we go. I'm going to save these triggers just to be safe. And we're going to call it Amazon Defense Triggers. There we go. Now we've got our first batch of army set up for player 3 to use. Now, what I like to do is, obviously you'd probably want to have units upgrade over time. So what I like to do is, since I want grenadiers to start spawning, and I also want the units to start getting upgraded, I'm going to do start deploy grenadiers, and then we'll set our time up, and we'll make it 1000 seconds. And then what I'll do for this is set text status. There we go. Player 3. And what I'll do is I'll make it veteran musketeers. So that way it is impacting it, but it's okay because I do want the musketeers to get stronger over time. And this is a good way to also smoothly move grenadiers into the mashup of units that's going to be attacking. So now I'm going to make a new trigger, start spawn grenadiers, and we're going to loop it. And then we're going to make it so text status equals player 3. We're going to want to scroll down to veteran musketeers. There we go. And now we're going to also want to choose a timer here. So every 40 seconds, it'll spawn, well actually let's make it 45 seconds, it'll spawn Grenadiers. And then we'll do army deploy. And then we'll choose Grenadiers army. And then we need to find the Grenadier proto name. Should be under G, but if it's not, I will sit here and find it. There we go. We'll set the area right in front of the command center there. And I think I'll make it a group of 4. So now every 40 seconds, and as long as Veteran Musketeers has been activated, it'll spawn 4 Grenadiers in front of the command center. And I'm also going to set the command center is alive, so that way the Grenadiers will stop if that's destroyed. And now we're going to add in our attack for the Grenadiers. So Grenadiers attack. We'll start attack. Start attack. 1. We'll set it to loop. Then we'll set our conditions to just a timer. And I'll make it every 30 seconds. And then army move. Attack move. Army, source the Grenadiers. And we'll just set it to this area in general. So down here, I guess. Then we're going to want to save our triggers again, since we've got all of that. There we go, Amazon Defense right at the top. So now we've got a basic setup for our various armies. But there's one important thing, and it's that what you really need to make sure in this scenario that the players don't just book it out of here is an objective to defend, or something they need to look, you know, after, so they don't just leave. Because obviously it'd be very easy for players to just be like, no, I don't want to stay over here and be attacked, and then you have to set up a whole bunch of triggers to actually get the players to be seen and gone after and all that fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a native settlement here. May take a moment to load sometimes, but seems to be alright. Now I'm going to choose this one. You can say any unsaved progress will be lost and just say yes to that. That's not something to worry about. Now I'm just trying to decide how I'm going to put this in here. So I think like that would be decent looking. We want it somewhere prominent so that it'll be seen. I just realized I need to fix this. There we go. Just wanted to make sure that it was still set to Gaia. So I can just go back in and redo that. That's not a big deal. I do have to scroll down again though. There we go. Native Inca Village 3 again. Again, just say yes to that. That's not anything really negative that'll impact it. We're going to want to put the Inca Village up there. And then I'm going to do another one. Oh. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to go to load built-in grouping again. This time I'm going to add an Aztec village. There we go. Alright. I'm going to put an Aztec village up here. And I'm going to put down trading posts. Need to go back to buildings, trading posts for player 2 and player 1. Oh, that's right. I need to change the scenario and add in the actual native settlements that are allowed in this scenario. So I'm gonna Tupi Zapotec, Seminoles, Nootka, Maya, Incas, Aztecs, Mapuche, just all of the ones I can think of that could be on a small Amazon-esque map. There we go. Now I'll have to put them back down. There we go. Just put them back down here. Now, something that can sometimes happen here is for this to take effect and for you to be able to put down the native village and then put a trading post on it, it may need you to play test it once everything's set up, just for you to be able to actually put down a trading post on the native villages. This is the best way, as far as I'm aware, to put down native villages, because you can make them yourself, but if you decide to make them yourself, not all of the buildings will be counted towards the native settlement. So what I was looking for here was the native Aztec. There we go. And open them. Put them down here. So if this does not work, then what I will do is I will simply go in and playtest really quick, just for the sake of getting it to function properly. So I'm going to try to add a trading post now for player 2. And so that doesn't want to work. So what I'm going to do is just save really quick. Scenario, playtest scenario, and just either sieve, any sieve, just to get it to load. There we go. So now we can just quit, go back, and now we should be able to put our trading post on there for each player. So trading post. So there we go. So now we've got trading post for player 2. We're going to put down a trading post for player 1. For some reason player 1's trading post isn't showing up correct. It might be I have the wrong type of Aztec selected. Again, this is why you want to be careful here, because if you choose the wrong type of civ, the game doesn't treat them quite right. So I could have the wrong type of Aztec selected somewhere here. But since we've got both of them set up, at least for the moment, now we have something for our players to have to defend. So now the players can't just abandon their bases once they are a bit overwhelmed, but also it's not entirely fair to just make them have to deal with it without any kind of assistance. So I like to give them a type of unit that they can start with just in that general area. So I might just put down, for this trading post, I'll put down a few macemen. Hopefully that's not too loud, the unit building sound. And then for player 2 as the Aztecs, I'll give them 5 of the Skull Knights. So I kind of have it in reverse here, where I gave the Mace Men to the Aztecs, and I gave the Skull Knights to the Inca, just to switch it up a little bit. Just to show, you know, in a way how they're allies without really saying anything. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up these trading posts to be required defense buildings for the players. So what I'm going to do is go down to Group Editor. I'm going to insert another group. And I'm going to make it Player Defend Trading Post. There we go. Triggers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, well, first I should name it. I'll put it Players Defend Trading Posts. There we go. And then I will make it so that is dead, and I'll source both trading posts here. And then I will make it so that if the players lose, I will set the players to defeated. So, whoop, zoomed in for a moment there. So I'm looking for either set player, there we go, set player defeated, player 1, and set player defeated, player 2. So that way, if they're both dead, then it'll activate the trigger setting both players into defeated status. They'll be put out. So that way we have the defense that they must do, and then obviously we also want to make sure our players know about that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up some objectives. I'll get rid of that. I'm going to insert an objective. I'm just going to put it defend the native trading posts, and then I can put in the text defend the trading posts of the natives to ensure our continued hold against the British. There we go. And then we'll have it initially visible, initially discovered is primary objective, yes, because we don't want the players to not know exactly what they need to be doing. We'll close that. So now we have our lose condition set up as well. So now we have the players' defense requirements set up. We have given them some defenders. We have our attackers here. Now, what I also like to do for this, and this is optional since I've set it up so that the AI isn't in control, I'm going to go into my triggers, and I'm going to go into ungrouped, and I'm just going to make a small trigger called age up for player 3. We're going to set it to always. Then we're going to look for set player age, I believe it's called. No, it's not called that. So it might be under player set age. Yep, there we go. And I'm going to choose player 3. Let's set this to 1. So every number you put in the age section is +1. So every civ starts at age 0, so 0 + 1. If you change this to age 1, it's 1 + 1, so that's age 2, and so on and so forth up till age 5. After age 5, I don't think anything happens, but I've never tried doing that because I haven't had a reason to. But this is just for aesthetics. So now when the game first starts and loads everything up, player 3 will immediately go into age 2. So that means these barracks won't look like the small wooden ones, they will look more like the high quality ones from age 2. Then I'm also going to, since this is the Amazon, I'm going to add in a rain trigger. This is entirely optional, but it's just something I like to put in. So there is render rain. I like to set it to 100%. And I'm going to save my triggers. And now what we're going to do is go into our triggers, and we are going to set our player win conditions. So I was wrong, we don't go into triggers right away, we want to make another group. We're going to insert group, player 1 and 2 win conditions. There we go. Now triggers. And now I'm going to just make a very simple win condition. So let's say objective beat British complete. There we go. And then I'm going to make it so that you have to kill all of the British building structures. So the fort center, and then shift click, and the barracks, and the fort, and the cannons, and the stables. I'm going to source all of those. So now you can see if I click show, all of those are selected. And then what I'm going to do is player set. So set player 1, sorry. And then we're going to set player 1, 1. Set 1 player 2. And then we're going to set player defeated for player 3. Set player 3. And now it's also good, but first we're going to make a quick save of our triggers, just in case something happens. I'm going to go to our scenarios, objectives, close our triggers for a second. And I'm going to insert an objective primary 2, defeat the British. There we go. And then destroy all British unit producing structures to be victorious. There we go. So we're going to leave that primary, initially visible, initially discovered. There we go. So now we're also going to go and we're going to set objective complete, and defeat the British. And I like to put on force complete just to be safe. So now we have our very basic scenario pretty well all set up. We've got some extra armies here, and we've got some extra players in here, and I'm going to see if I can edit this map slightly to make it slightly more enjoyable to what I think would be positive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first get rid of all of these extra players. So you do that by going to scenario data, sorry. Okay, and so now when we go to player data, basically all the others have been removed. And now what I'm going to do is I'd like to add in some additional native settlements for the players and then make it an optional objective. And so that way you can see this particular optional objective. And then I probably edit the map slightly to add in some specific looking things to it. Some things to beautify it, I guess you could call it. And then I will playtest it to see if things are all working the way I want them to be working. So the first thing I'm going to do here, load built-in grouping again for natives. And then I'm going to choose, now there appears to be two separate versions of Inca villages. I'm just going to choose one of them at random. I think number 4 will do. There we go. And put one there. And then, since I didn't realize this was set to player 2, but that's fine. So I'll make one over here for player 1. So that way it's kind of crisscrossing the map. Okay, we'll close our object placer. Then load built-in grouping. And we'll do an Aztec native settlement now. There we go. Now we've got a couple extra settlements. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our objectives now. Objective 3. We're going to turn off is primary objective. These two I'm going to leave ticked for now, just for the sake of making this a bit more simple, but it's very easy to enable these using triggers. And I'm going to put build additional native trading posts. And then to strengthen our numbers, we should ally with additional settlements. Then we can say something like, we have already scouted some nearby, to help explain why they're already showing as noticed by the player. There we go. And then what we're going to do is going to go down to our triggers, and I'm going to make a trigger call, or a group called bonus objectives. There we go. And triggers, insert, and then bonus objective build on trading posts. Well, you can't have the comma in there or else it won't accept the name. And then there is a specific one for trading posts here. You can see socket empty there. So that's for if a trading post is destroyed. So let me see here. There we go. Player controls socket. There we go. And then we can do the same for the one down here. I don't know why I made a new one. Just going to copy that. And then we're going to do socket. And then we're going to copy that one. Change it to player 2 and socket. And copy the first one. Copy it. Player 2. and socket. There we go. And if I did that correctly, it should now, if either player controls them, give them the completion of the bonus objective. So now we're going to set up the objective complete for the bonus objective. Just going to go down to objective, objective complete, build an additional native trading posts, force complete on, and there we go. Now we're going to save our triggers again. Very important to keep saving them. We're going to save our map, so that way hopefully the trading posts don't get thrown into oblivion. Now, this map is a little bland because there's basically not a lot going on in it. So something that I was shown that's very helpful is you can go into all and then underbrush, and there's a ton of props you can use for the underbrush. So you can see it's kind of hard to tell from a distance, so I'll zoom in a bit. But you can see there's various small plants, rocks, underbrush you can put down. As you can see, jungle appears to be the one that matches with the Amazon. And so this way you can put down, you know, your own various underbrush pieces. Now, there's already a lot of this bush-like underbrush. So what I'm going to do is try to avoid the logs and underbrush type of thing and mostly go for small additions. I don't mind putting down more underbrush, but mostly it's ferns, rocks, and various other small plants. I don't need as many fallen logs because I already have tons of them. You can see it generates a lot of fallen logs for some reason in the forest biome for Amazon. There we go. And then another one I like to use is the Japan one. So Japan, underbrush, flowers, Japan. They have some very nice flowers in the Japan underbrush. And it doesn't look too out of place. And now what I'm going to do is I've kind of made my own custom underbrush. And you can actually select these. These are all selectable. They just don't show anything when you select them. So I'm going to drag my mouse over them, select them, let go, Control C, Control V, and as you can see, I now have a huge amount of extra to work with. And so you can just use this to really fill up an area full of various things to help make it look more filled. I grabbed a bit more than I would like, but that's okay. You can see I've got tons and tons of flowers and other things like that. But this way, I'm making sure to get lots of that empty space filled, because just empty space doesn't look great. It doesn't look bad, but it looks kind of strange because it's the middle of a forest and it's supposed to not be super human colonized. So it's good to just get sort of filled in with all of these various things. And the underbrush props don't impact anything. If a player builds on them, they will simply be destroyed, and the player won't be damaged by it at all in any way. So now we've given a fair bit more life to what our map will look like. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I'll let go of that by pressing escape. I did miss this big area here, so I'm just gonna take this, copy it, paste it, and fill in this area a bit. There we go. Now it's a bit more filled in. Now, normally I might go in and put in lots of small props for this little base here. For just the sake of time, I'm not going to, because I'm sure most people can figure out just to go into objects and just place down whatever things you think would make this look nice. So now I'm just going to do a different type of beautifying. I'm going to use the cliff tool. And the canyon and cliff tool is very, very strange. Because if you just put it down, you can see now there's just this large cliff here. But if you do it by very small increments, it actually makes small slopes between them, almost like it's changing the level of it. So if you want to make just cliffs, you generally want to stay about 1 degree of separation from them, or else it might just turn it into slopes. And if you want to make, say, a canyon or a cliff that players can actually go on top of, you can do something like this, and I will move those trees in a moment so that they're on top of this, but just gonna finish the cliff here first. And then put a little more up here. So now that I've made my cliff, I'm gonna take this smoothing tool, and if you left click, it doesn't do anything, but if you right click, it'll turn it into completely usable land that players can go up. And then you can use your left click to help smoothen it out. But you want to right click to make it into more of a hill that can be climbed, as opposed to just cliff face, which can't be accessed at all. So I'm just going to smooth that out a little bit more, because that looks a little strange. There we go. And now I want to get these out from being stuck under the cliff. Select them all and move. Oh, I didn't select them all. Select all of those. Click move. There we go. So there we go. Now our trees are back up top where they were supposed to be. I think these ones need to be moved too. I think they were still stuck in the cliff. So there, now you have your cliffs there. And lastly, I'm going to change the lighting because I like the lighting a little bit darker. So what you have to be careful is not all of these lightings are supposed to be used. Some of these are for cutscenes and they don't work quite right. So you have to be wary of that. So just watch out if you're in this and you suddenly see something on the right side that doesn't look okay. Like a cutting off kind of look where there's a perfect rectangle on the right side of your screen or something. That means it's a cinematic and it's supposed to be zoomed in and they don't expect you to be able to see that far. So now I'm just trying to find one I like. Personally, I like the bayou look. It gives it kind of a nighttime-y feel, personally. And then last thing I want to do is set the camera. So I'm going to set the camera to be probably right here, so that way you can see both bases. So what you want to do is go to View and set Camera Start Location, and now you have your starting location. So now we've got basically everything set up. I'm going to go and I'm going to save all my triggers and save the map and all that good stuff. There we go. Okay, and now I'm actually going to return to the main menu, and I'm going to go to multiplayer, host casual game, and I'm going to give it a password, and we're going to choose, we're going to choose scenario. We're going to go to our Amazon Defense one. 1 second here. Defense of the Amazon. There we go. Now we're going to host a game, and this way no one can join us while we're testing our game. Might take a moment to load for you. I know it usually takes a moment for me with the scenarios. There we go. So as you can see, I'm the Aztecs. Now I'm going to just make sure I'm the right Aztecs for the sake of testing this. You can see my ally is the Inca, and then the British are our player 3. I forgot to change my ally to a player character, so I'll fix that, but first we just want to test the map. So I'm going to ready up. And there we go. So now you can see I'm in the game. You can see Queen Elizabeth went into H2. It's raining now. And you can see all our objectives on the side here. You can see we got my hut, or my trading, or town center, sorry. Now we're waiting to see if the scouting works as well. So I'm already noticing a couple small issues with this. So I'm going to take it back to Scenario Editor. First of all, villagers didn't spawn, which they're supposed to. For some reason they didn't spawn. So we're going to go back and fix that. And then we're also going to shorten the time on the scouting just to make sure that it comes through okay. I go to Tools and back into our Scenario Editor. Then I'm going to just choose the Defense of the Amazon. You have to be careful not to accidentally save over it, because it will ask you every time you try to change scenarios. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to want to give villagers, since it didn't immediately start with villagers, I'm going to give our players villagers. So player 1, we're going to give you some villagers. There we go, because for some reason it didn't start them even with starting crates, which is a little odd, but we can make up for that in a creative way. So we'll give both players 10 villagers to start. There we go. And then I didn't make player 2 a player, so I'm going to switch this from computer to human. So now player 2 is a human player, and I can invite someone to play cooperatively in this scenario. And then I'm also going to, like I said before, I'm going to go to the scout trigger, and just to make sure that it works, I'm going to set it to 20 seconds. And then I'm going to save it really quick and save our map. And then I'm going to play test the scenario as player 1. Doesn't matter what difficulty we choose because we're in control of the bots, so we're deciding how hard this is going to be on our players. So now we're just going to wait to see how long it might take for our skits to arrive here. And while I do that, I can just send my starting hero out. Now, as this is the Aztecs and the Inca, I'm also remembering that the Aztecs normally start with a warrior priest and an eagle scout. So that's something else I can add. An Eagle Scout and a Warrior Priest. And the Inca are supposed to start with a Llama. So I will add that in a moment. We're just waiting to see, though, if our scouts do show up like they're supposed to. And we can also, I think I might add wood crates for both players, just to make sure that they have the wood needed to make houses, because starting them with 10 villagers immediately just completely fills up their population, along with the various other units that I started them with. And what I'm seeing here is it doesn't look like our scouts are showing up. So again, this happens sometimes. Like maybe I put the cliff over where they're supposed to spawn and they're stuck in it. That's entirely possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit out and go to my triggers. We're going to go to player 3 scout, scouts for player 3, show area. So they're supposed to be spawning right here. I'm just going to make sure that they are spawning right there. SR, Scout Army player 3. It's supposed to be 20 seconds. And then they're supposed to move every 30 seconds. Alright. And then, just for the sake of double checking, I'm going to give myself spies just to be able to see what's going on. So I'm going to go down to set text status, player 1, and whoop, I tried using the hotkey, but sometimes that doesn't work. So I'm just going to go straight down to S. There we go. Spies, save triggers, save, overwrite. There we go. And then we're going to play test our scenario again as player 1. And there we go. So now I have spies, so I can see everything going on. So if something doesn't work quite right, like I'm not sure if the scouts are going to show up properly or not, but like if the scouts are caught on something, this way I can at least see. So see, like they are already just heading back to base. That's not what we want them to do. So I must have probably put the greater than, lesser than symbol backwards. And I will just go back and quickly fix that. So we'll go in, player 3 scout trigger, and then we'll do the return to base, and I probably had that backwards. There we go. Save to Amazon Defense triggers. And also I'm going to add those wood crates. So wood, there we go. 400 wood crate. We'll add 2 of those for player 1 and 2 of those for player 2. And save. And then our triggers, we're going to want to make sure those were saved. I am so used to saving them, I don't even remember if I did. Then there's scenario, playtest scenario, player 1. And now we'll see if those scouts work properly this time. They'll come in at the 20-second mark, and we'll just see if they are working or not working.
Matne. Ikho.
Komanse. Atsak.
Ok. Ashku.
So you can see they spawned, and then we have to wait until 30-second mark, there we go, for them to start moving. In the meantime, I will just fiddle around with my base.
Ashak.
Ok.
So they immediately got attacked by the mace men here. So I may want to change where the scouts come from. And also I still need to add in the warrior priest and the eagle scout. Alright, so what I'm going to do here, so I don't forget, priest, warrior priest, player 1, and then eagle scout, and then for player 2, we want a llama, there we go. And save our map really quick so it saves what we just added there. Now we're going to change really quick where our scouts are coming from, so that way they don't run into our mace men here. They aren't moving in as straight a line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them start, say, down here. There we go. And then we're going to save our triggers. Then we'll play test our scenario, and we'll see if they come in from the right section and scout our little base here.
Matne.
Gok.
Now we've got our warrior priest and our eagle scout properly set up too as well. We're waiting for that 20-second mark for the scouts to hopefully show up. While we wait for that, again, I'm just gonna sit here and manage my villagers like it was a normal game. So you can see our scouts have spawned. Now we're just waiting. There we go. So now our scouts are moving. I'm not going to immediately let my hero attack them or something. I'm just going to see what happens if they make it the whole way. Because we do want to see if they do the return to base order as well. So yes, they do also try to return back to their home base once they reach that certain point, now that I've fixed the greater than, lesser than symbol. So that seems perfectly good now. So I'm going to quit out now that I know it's working. Okay, and now we're going to adjust our scout spawn time back to what it was before, which I believe was 600 seconds, I think. If I'm wrong, that's fine. It's just for the sake of this. Here we go. Alright. So now we've got most things set up here, and most of it should automatically work. The things you have to kind of look out for now are just making sure certain things work the way you want them to. So now what I'm going to do to double check the optional objectives, and I've had a lot of difficulty with the trading post building thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back, and I'm going to go to multiplayer again, host a game, select scenario, and then we're going to do the defense of the Amazon again. There we go. Add a password of 1 so no one accidentally joins us and has to deal with our beta testing. There we go. Now you can just put anything in this slot. I guess I should put Inca, but you can. Because it's supposed to be a player, but we're not bringing a player with us right now. And the Aztecs seem to work properly, so hopefully everything's fine in that regard. So we'll just start up here. So now, two of the things I'm going to try and look out for are if the deck is working like I've tried to make it. So yeah, there's Land Aztec 2. Again, you have to make it its own unique deck. You can't edit the base ones, which is why I deleted them. And now I'm going to see if I can make the optional objective work. It's been very difficult in the past, so if it doesn't work, I'm not going to be super surprised, but I'm hopeful that it will work. So right now my villagers are just gathering me some food, and then I'll do the very slow build method. There we go. Alright, so I've set my hero to go and try and do that. And while things just go on their own, I'm going to just play like it's a normal game, because we can also test to make sure our victory condition or loss condition is working properly. Now obviously it's not perfect because our player 2 has no function right now. They're just a placeholder, so it's going to be more of a 1v1 than it's going to be a 2v1, which is both good and bad. Okay, we'll send in warrior priests. So now you can see both trading posts have been built, but it's not counting them towards the objective. So what's probably happening is I'll have to go into the triggers and set it to or. There's a little option in the triggers that says for the conditions or this or that, and you can use that to be able to just make it so that if these are built on by either player, it'll do it. I had wanted it to be, you know, specific for each player, or even just for one player, but that isn't working, so we'll just set it to the OR option. But now we will try and just play this game normally and see how things go. So, after testing the map, I noticed a few problems. So the first one is I did not add music. So what we're going to do is create a trigger, just call it music, always active, no problem with that. And we're just going to go down to play, or wait, no, I believe it's music. There we go, music play. Save that trigger, because otherwise it's just dead silent except for the sound of units and people working. And obviously music's a nice thing to have just playing in the background. Another thing was our musketeers weren't spawning properly. The hussars and the grenadiers were working fine, but the musketeers weren't working for some reason. So this is fine. So start spawn muskets must be broken because the muskets weren't appearing. So they're still supposed to be spawning around here. The conditions must be having a problem. There's the problem. So it was setting for, or it was looking for Bastion from player 1 instead of player 3. So now that's fixed, so now the Musketeers should spawn. So we're going to save that. And the last problem that I saw was that for some reason the objective was not going off for completing it. So what I'm going to do here really quick is fix this really quick. So I just want to confirm all the buildings. See, it accidentally selected one of the impossible buildings, which is the gun placement. So we just want to deselect that and go through and reselect the correct buildings. There we go, and source those. And now we want to also redo this because for some reason it didn't like that I copied this. So we're going to delete that. We're going to do set player defeated manually instead of using a copy. Set player defeated and player 3. And then I'm also going to put in pause game just so that the player knows that the game's over and they don't need to do anything else. So with that all done, that should be all of the various things taken care of. Oh, I almost forgot. We need to fix our bonus objective. We're going to go to our conditions. 1 second, we need to select it. Go to our conditions and just hit OR. And that should make it so that if the sockets are controlled, then it should complete the bonus objective. And then we'll save that trigger. And there we go. Now, a lot of these things, a lot of these things were learned mostly through trial and error. But the other thing that I like to do, and I got permission from the author to go through his triggers and not copy them verbatim, like just use the triggers, but to look at them and use them as an example or a base for my own scenarios, was from a scenario maker named Platty. He has some great scenarios and really well set up triggers. So if you ever need an example, you can use Platty's maps as examples. I believe the one he's done the most work with is the map called British Arabia. Let me see if I can find it here. Sorry, 1 second here. There we go, British Arabia. The most recent version is 33. I'll just open that really quick. All my stuff is saved, so this shouldn't damage anything. There we go. And so you can see this entire map is made by Platty, the scenario maker. And it's a great scenario. I really enjoyed playing it, and this is one that I very often come back to look at the triggers because the grouping and the triggers are all really well set up. So that's the only other thing I can recommend, is if you're ever lost, don't be afraid to go into other scenarios to look at what people have done to make their own scenarios work the way they do. So now I'll just go back to our scenario. No, we don't want to save anything because we didn't change anything. We're going to open the Defense of the Amazon. And there you go. And so that's basically how most of the scenario things work. One of the big things that I was told was the deck maker doesn't work. It does work, but only if you do it right at the beginning, because if you ever come back, it won't work. And those decks don't show up in scenario editor, only in multiplayer.